Hello, this is Joe from Nerd in Korea. We are doing our budget interest commanders number 11 already, and we're looking at the colorless identity. I want to be clear here. When I say colorless identity, I don't mean the commander is colorless, but I'm going to talk about that more in a second. So what is this series about? These videos are meant to give ideas for good commanders that are available on a budget. I am focused on commanders that use more niche mechanics and are highly abusable. The more niche mechanics you focus on in your deck, the cheaper the cards will be, right? There are plenty of cards that are really great in very specific decks, and the more specific your deck, the more of those cards you can get, and those cost like pennies rather than like 30 bucks. It's pretty amazing, the difference in price between things sometimes. This video features commanders that make use of colorless spells and mechanics. Okay, so this is about not colorless commanders, it's about colorless commanders that make it use of colorless things, like token creatures, manifest, things like that. It's really focused more on those. It's not really so much about whether the commander itself is colorless. And what does budget mean? Okay, $2 or less, and that's according to the TCG market value. Not a sponsor, not one bit. Number 5. Omarthus, Ghostfire Initiate. Again, his casting cost is XX, so for every 2 you pay, he comes to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. He's a 0/0, so he needs those counters just to stay alive, right? But yeah, you can if you can get a good mana ramp engine going, you can make him very big. Also, whenever you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on another colorless creature, you may put a +1/+1 counter on him as well. So if you have creatures that enter the battlefield and get +1/+1 counters, as long as they're colorless, he will also get the same number. So you're really kind of just stacking them up. So the commander damage win con is definitely doable with this one, I'd say. You'd probably want an equipment that grants some kind of evasion and double strike. That would make it much easier, but yeah. Oh yeah, and when he dies, you manifest a number of cards from the top of your library equal to the number of counters on it. So if they do kill him, you get to put a whole bunch of manifest creatures down, which are 2/2 creatures, right? And basically, at any time you can flip them over by paying. If they're a creature, you can flip them over by paying their casting cost at any time. The really crazy thing about this is that they do not enter the stack. Flipping over a card doesn't enter the stack, so they can't be responded to. They can't like counterspell a creature that is just being flipped over, basically, right? They can still use removal and kill it like anything else, but yeah, it shuts off one option your opponents have to just be able to mess with your deck. Also, when there's a board wipe, you're like, hey, great, I get all these manifest creatures and everyone else is going to have nothing, right? It's kind of turns board wipes into almost an advantage for you. Anyway, 99 cents. Cryptic Trilobite. Okay, so when it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters, again, he has the XX casting cost, but remove a +1/+1 counter, add 2 colorless mana, spend this mana only to activate abilities. Oh my god, he doesn't have to tap for that, right? You don't have to tap him to do that, so you can just like keep taking +1/+1 counters off of him to activate all of the abilities of all the creatures you want. If you've got some proliferate in there, you're going to be stacking up those +1/+1 counters very quickly. And yeah, you can use even abilities to proliferate, which will give him more +1/+1 counters. So yeah, that's something that I think you could end up in a kind of infinite loop pretty quickly. Anyway, 69 cents. Steel Overseer, put a +1 or tap him to put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact creature you control. 64 cents. Again, if you're doing it to each of your creatures, even if you have like 5 creatures, that's 5 +1/+1s on your commander, or 5 extra +1/+1s on your commander. And when there's a board wipe or someone uses removal or something, he's just going to like go ahead and make a whole pile of those manifest creatures. So yeah, it gets scary very quickly. Finally, Hexavis. Hexavis enters the battlefield with 6 +1/+1 counters on it. So this does specify instead of the X cost, but for 1 mana, no tap, remove a +1/+1 counter from Hexavis and put a flying counter on another target creature. So you take a +1/+1 off of this and you put a flying counter on any creature you want, probably your commander, right? You want that evasion to guarantee your commander damage, basically. And you can also pay 1, remove a counter from another creature you control, and put a +1/+1 on this. So even if that doesn't have 1, you can pay 1 and just move it, and then pay another 1 and just get rid of it and put a flying counter on it. Giving flying, or a permanent flying especially, to a creature for 1 mana is crazy good. I mean, yeah, okay, you do have to take the +1/+1 counter off, but you know, whatever. It's not even a tap ability, so you can do that multiple times in 1 turn. Just make all your stuff flying and then end the game. And then weigh 14 cents only. Hey. Number 4. Vanifar Evolved Enigma. Okay, so at the beginning of combat on your turn, I do like things that are triggered by things like just your turn phases. So this is just at the beginning of combat. You don't have to pay mana, you don't have to tap, you don't have to like fulfill some kind of condition. You don't need like 5 food tokens or some nonsense. Like, you just combat. Combat happens, you get this. Okay, cloak a card from your hand. That means put it on the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature with ward 2. Turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. Again, so you probably want something where you can see the top card of your deck would be quite handy, but not necessary. Or even just scry, I guess. And then, yeah, if someone attacks it, first of all, it has ward 2. Ward flawed, I know, but better than nothing. Yeah. And as I said, this has the same kind of effect as Manifest, where flipping it over there does not enter the stack. They cannot respond to that, right? There's no counterspell to flipping over a card. You just do it. Anyway, or you can put a +1/+1 counter on each colorless creature you control. Again, colorless creature, right? So this is a very scary like commander. I think these last two would work really well together. Have a Vanifar with a Omnathus in the deck. I would definitely put it in, but anyway. 32 cents. Having access to the counter strategy is very, very useful, right? It's more than just boosting damage. You can get all kinds of like other benefits, like Evolution Witness. Every time you put a +1/+1 counter on Evolution Witness, you take something out of your graveyard and put it back on the battlefield. Or is it back to hand? I feel like I always get things wrong when I'm recording, but anyway, it's really good is the point. 32 cents. So, Basking Brood Scale. I keep calling it Blood Scale, I don't know why. Brood Scale. It has Devoid, so it's technically colorless, which is nice, even though it's 1 in a green. And for 1 in a green, you can adapt 1 if it has no +1/+1 counters on it. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. Yeah, sure. That's not the important part, though. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Basking Brood Scale, you may create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi creature token with sacrifice this creature, add colorless. This can also be used in a lot of combos as well. So yeah, if you've got something where it's like every time a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put another +1/+1 counter on something, you can just keep doing that, and then yeah, infinite loop with 2 cards. Anyway, also the fact that they can be sacrificed for mana. And one last thing I want to point out with those Eldrazi tokens, it doesn't say tap, right? It just says sacrifice. So as soon as they're made, you can blow them up and like just make them into mana. It's really +1/+1 counters and creating mana. Or tokens if you really need the token. But anyway. This 31 cents only. I actually pulled this from Modern Horizons 3. I didn't realize how good it was at first, but yeah. I'm gonna put it in one of my decks soon. Scroll of Fate. So manifest a card from your hand, tap to manifest a card from your hand. 6 cents. That is actually really good. Again, the manifest is an ability, right? So if they want to counter that, they have to counter the ability. It's not a spell casting. And if you put a creature down, you can then flip that creature over, and there's no point where like counterspell can affect it. You kind of build a route around regular casting, basically. For 6 cents, that's worth it. Trail of Mystery. So whenever a face-down creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Okay, so it would be much better if it went to the battlefield, but one thing you want to do, you want to guarantee your land drops. Always guarantee your land drops first, ramp second. I see a lot of decks where they're always like ramp, and it's like, okay, but you want to play the land for turn, right? If you miss your land drop in ramp 1 and it costs you mana, you're actually behind, you're not ahead. Anyway. Whenever a permanent you control is turned face up, if it's a creature, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So right there, that's just a crazy amount of synergy also, because you want to be doing that in this deck. You want to be like abusing the, like, surprise, I've got this creature, right? You can like, before declaring blockers even, you can just flip them over and be like, oh hey, this is actually a super big creature. And on that turn, you'll also get +2/+2. Which makes some creatures very scary. Anyway, 6 whole cents again. Number 3. Rakdos, Lord of Riots. Okay, so this is actually recommended to me by someone on the Budget Facebook group. Justin Noble, thank you very much. So, he is 2 black, 2 red. You can't cast spells unless an opponent lost life this turn. Right off the bat, there's a very major limitation. You can't even cast spells until one of your opponents at least loses life. That's a major kind of hindrance you're putting on yourself. What makes it worth it though? Again, he has Flying and Trample, which is nice with the 6/6 or 4. All very good things. Creature spells you cast 1 less to cast for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. Every time your opponents lose life, that's casting cost reduction to creatures for you. That gets out of hand very quickly, especially with if you've got a lot of artifact creatures that are colorless, they're going to be free pretty quickly. Especially in Commander, you've got 3 opponents. Even if you do kind of like auto damage, 1 auto damage 3 times, that's 9. How many cards are you going to have that cost more than 9? Not a lot. It's just like, oh boy. Anyway, 196. Okay, so we're looking at things that do auto damage to get that casting cost reduction. First of all, Thermal Alchemist has Defender, a 0/3 for 1 and a red. And you can tap the Thermal Alchemist to do 1 damage to each opponent. Again, 1 damage to each opponent is 3 cost reduction to all your creatures. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, untap Thermal Alchemist. So if you can tap them and then cast an instant or sorcery, untap, tap. You do that twice, that's 6 cost reduction on all of your creatures already. 6. 15 cents. Artisan of Kozilek. When you cast a spell, you may return target card from your graveyard to the battlefield, alright? Not to your hand, straight to the battlefield. It does cost 9, but as I said, in this deck, 9 is not like a crazy amount of mana. Also has Annihilator too, but yeah. 22 cents only. Finally, Cryptolith Fragment, and when it enters the battlefield, or it enters the battlefield tapped, it's an artifact for 3. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Each player loses 1 life. This does target you, right? This does affect you also, but yeah. You're getting 1 mana and 3 cost reduction from this. Or cost reduction on creatures from this, right? So it's really kind of like, for if you want to cast a creature, it's like having 4 mana. Just very, very good. Also, it can transform if each player has 10 or less life. That might come up, but that's not why you want it, right? Anyway, 45 cents. Number 2, the Cyber Controller. This one, I actually got this one because I was like, I thought this was going to go way up in value, and then it just stagnated. This should not be a 12-cent card. It should not. Anyway. So the Cyber Controller, X, blue, black, so it's a Dimir, but mostly focused on colorless. So when the Cyber Controller enters the battlefield, each opponent, mills X cards. Put all creature cards milled this way into the battlefield face down under your control. They are 2/2 Cybermen artifact creatures. Other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Artifact creature anthem effect, and when he enters the battlefield, you can just decide how much everyone else is going to mill, and then steal everything that you force them to mill. Very, very Dimir and very, very mean. Dimir is great at milling, so if you're going to do a mill strategy, this is a great commander to use to keep mill going and to have like the board control. Also to like take away options, which I think is hilarious. Anyway, as I said, 12 cents. Chief Engineer. Okay, so artifact spells you cast have Convoke. Alright, so you're making all these manifest creatures, right? So your creatures can help those cast those spells. Each creature you tap while casting an artifact pays for 1 of the mana of that creature's color. Or pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color. Again, you're going to be able to use your manifest creatures that you stole from everyone else as mana rocks, basically. Anyway, for artifact spells only though, but yeah, 50 cents. Etrata, Deadly Figure. Fugitive, Deadly Fugitive. Ugh. I can't read. It's not good. She is 1 and Dimir, so blue-black. For a Death Touch, 1/4. Death Touch is always great. Face down creatures you control have pay 2 and blue-black. Turn this creature face up. If you can't, exile it, and then you may pay. You may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Whenever an assassin you control deals combat damage to an opponent, cloak the top card of that player's library. So you're kind of doing that stealing extra thing. You get to, if you have assassins, this is kind of a whole different strategy maybe, but yeah. She is the assassin as well, so anyway. And this can let you cast things for a cost reduction, basically, right? If the creature costs more than if it costs more than 4, do it for this cost instead, and then there you go, all set. Especially if it's other people's creatures you're casting, you never really know, so yeah. That alternate spell cost could do a lot of work. Master of Ethereum. Again, 2 and a blue, so his power and toughness are each equal to the number of artifacts you control. Remember, the manifests, the Cybermen, actually, let me double check here. Oh, they are artifact creatures. Yeah, okay, there you go. For a second I was like, I thought they were, and then I thought they weren't. Anyway, I'm doing that thinking while I'm talking thing, which I'm very bad at. Anyway. Master of Ethereum's power and toughness, again, it's going to be huge with this deck, right? For every X, you're forcing them to mill, and then yeah, all the creatures that all of your opponents mill just go and become artifact creatures for you. So yeah, essentially 3/3 artifact creatures that you can use to cast spells that you are going to make this guy even bigger. Also, he has an anthem effect. Other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Another +1/+1. So there are 4/4s now. The milled creatures all have 4/4s. Oh. 15 cents? Number 1. Which colorless commanders do you recommend? So I would love to hear some suggestions. I'm hoping I could get together kind of like a viewer's picks version of this. So yeah, that would be interesting at least. So yeah, if you want to recommend some, well, I guess just commanders in general, but especially for this video, ones that make use of the colorless mechanics or are very good with colorless creatures and things like that, it would be great. Colorless spells is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, Sir Ginger, the meal ender. I just love the art already. The name is amazing as well, but anyway. So Sir Ginger, for 2, only 2. That's one really good thing about this commander. So Sir Ginger, the meal ender, has trample, hexproof, and haste as long as an opponent controls a planeswalker. He does not need all of this, but it's a nice little bonus, right? Whenever another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Sir Ginger and scry 1. Scry 1 that you can do multiple times is actually really, really good. The obvious thing to do with this is like token artifact token strategy, whether it's treasure or food or, you know, clue. There's lots of great options to build around this. It's kind of hard to choose even. So yeah, for 2 and tap, you can sacrifice him and you gain life equal to its power. This is something you have as an option. Obviously, sacrificing your commander, not a great option, but maybe. You never know. If someone's going to exile it and you can get him out of your graveyard easily, which you probably can in this deck, it's better than, you know, going back to the command zone and paying the extra cost. You can just like sack him, gain life, and then yeah, he goes to the graveyard, pull him back out of the graveyard instead. Anyway, 48 cents only. Okay, so what I went with this, there's a lot of ways to build this, but what they all have in common is that you want to be able to get things back out of your graveyard. You want to be able to pull things back out repeatedly. Okay, so first up, Scrap Trawler. Whenever Scrap Trawler or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser mana cost. Okay, so that doesn't really help with things like treasure and clue and things like that, because their mana cost is 0 and there's no -1s. And anyway, so that is 61 cents. Still very useful because you're going to have a whole bunch of artifacts and artifact creatures that cost more, right? And it's just another artifact you control, not artifact creature. That's the other thing. Okay, next up is Candy Trail. Okay, so when it enters the battlefield, scry 2. So you're getting a double scry effect from this, so that's great. Again, for only 1 mana as well. For 2, you can sacrifice it and gain 3 life and draw a card. Again, so you put it down, you scry 2, you sack it, you scry another one because you're commander, and then you draw a card. That's a lot of setup for your card draw, and you gain 3 life. Sure, why not? But yeah, 35 cents. Scrap Trawler is going to be very good at pulling this back out of your graveyard as well. Pretty much anything you have, any other artifact you have that's like 2 or more mana, that's all you need to get this back to your hand and then cast it again, right? And then over and over and over. Anyway, Junk Diver. When Junk Diver dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So what's really good about that one is that it's any artifact goes back to your hand, right? It doesn't say like lower casting cost or anything like that. If Scrap Trawler and Junk Diver, not Driver, are both on the battlefield, I did it again. Junk Diver, I don't know why, dies, then you choose one of any artifacts in your graveyard, and then any artifact that's like 1 or 2 mana. So again, Kenny Trail, back to your hand, and anything else back to your hand. And because it's a creature entering the graveyard, you're gonna scry 1, and then do everything that Sir Ginger likes, and give him his +1/+1. Anyway, 13 cents. The List. All right. Omarthus Ghostfire Initiate is 36 cents. Vanifar Evolved Enigma is 32 cents. Rakdos Lord of Riots is 196, the top of the list here, or the top of the expense. The Cyber Controller, 12 cents. This is not a 12-cent card. This is just value not making sense. This is such a good card. Sir Ginger the Meal Ender, 48 cents. I think I'm going to do probably Sir Ginger and the Cyber Controller I want to make budget decks for, but anyway, I'm not going to ramble. I'm going to say take it easy.